Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Advisor. My name is Lisa Urbanski, and I co-host this show. I am here today with Laura Burkey. So we met a week ago, and she is someone who really understands language and relationships. And that's a powerful combination. A lot of people struggle with communication, and the topic we're going to talk about today is misunderstandings in communications. We always expect people to understand us, and we have this desire to be understood on the level that we're trying to portray to people. And today we're going to break that down and really talk about how communication and misunderstandings happen all the time and how to, get your point across. We just want to send a huge shout out to Spreaker and iHeartRadio. Thank you for your sponsorship, and to our fans and our followers and everyone listening and watching. We love you. Thank you. And please do not forget to like and subscribe. And feel free to leave any comments in the comment section. So, welcome back, Laura.
Thank you, Lisa.
How's it going? I know we just talked a little bit about our Thursdays. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling very clear. I'm very open, very calm, which is so welcomed, right? It's nice to have a day of like stillness. So that's the description. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. And like stillness is almost like having a superpower. Like not a lot of people are good at being still. So I love that you said that. And that's a whole nother episode we could cover.
Yeah. And I feel lucky. I mean, I actually feel like, oh my, wow, I get this today. So now, I can't say that I'm somebody who every day has this, but I do feel lucky. Like, oh, this feels so good. So
Oh,
yeah, I
I
agree.
love
It
that.
is a wonderful, powerful state of being.
I love that. And I'm so intrigued and interested in the work that you do and language and relationships. Those are two very powerful things. And when you blend them together, it could be either chaos or it could be like a beautiful song. So last time we talked about resentment and how that's like really a silent killer. So for our
Mhm.
audience, if you didn't check out that episode, go back and listen, watch, do whatever you need to do because it was really powerful. And we talked about what that does to a relationship and kind of how to recognize it and then manage that. So today we're going to talk about understanding. Do you want to go a little bit into that and a little bit about what you do before we start?
Well, what I do is I help people in relationship, mostly couples in relationship, but I've also helped other people, parent, child, siblings, people who work together. And what I do is I help kind of bridge the gap between two completely different worlds, and we really are our own world. The expression, "Who do you think you are? You think you're the center of the universe?" Like, the people have said that over decades, like as kind of like a not so friendly, kind thing to say. You know, saying that you're self-centered, you're selfish, it's only about you. But the thing is, in reality, that is our reality. We are
Mhm.
the center of our universe. Relativity. I mean, everything is relative to what? To my point of view. And how did my point of view get constructed? Through every single minute of my entire life. And all of the things that I heard, I saw, I studied, I reached for, I ran away from, that is who I am. And that's how I see and understand the world. And then so to you. And so people think that like, and it's naive and it's very it's an yeah, it's just naive, and you have to mature, and the more you relate with people and are in a relationship, that's where you learn. But we don't know this, so it's very naive to think everybody thinks like me. Well, everybody thinks this is what anybody would do in this situation. But that is how most people operate in relationship. There's a lot of assumption, a lot of I think just egocentric centrism. Just like it's what
Mm.
I see, everybody should see. Everybody should think this way. So that gets messy. It gets complicated. It gets challenging when two people, especially the closer they get, find out, oh my gosh, you're not feeling the same way I'm feeling. You're not seeing this the same way I'm seeing this. This doesn't make sense the same way it makes sense to me. It doesn't to you. And then challenge, conflict, and argument and all of that resentment, everything, misunderstanding ensues. And so I
Yes.
care about two people who have such a heart and an intention and a desire. I want to connect. Human beings are built to connect and be social. And there's a lot of hurt in that. And so people are afraid of it. They're trepidatious about it. And but they really want it. And I want to help them have it.
That's it's so true. We're all just like in our own movies that we're creating for ourselves, and it comes down to perception. And I remember, in my 20s, I just every this the situation was so clear to me. And my partner at the time, I was like, how does he not see it? And then he explained his perception of the situation. And then it kind of clicked in my mind, like, whoa, like I am seeing things in this way, he's seeing things in this way. And then it's like just learning to understand, like, that's okay that we see this differently. But yeah, for a long time, it's like I thought that everyone saw the world the way that I did through, Lisa's eyes, but everybody's seeing the world through their own eyes based on their, emotional pasts and what's happened to them. And it's, yeah, perception. It comes down to perception.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when a couple shares, and so this is where, because people automatically assume, well, here's what a happy marriage is. Here's here's what conflict means. No, here's what conflict means. And a lot of people think that a relationship should have no conflict. A good relationship is one without conflict, without even, I would say, argumentation, like arguing points. And then so people think, oh, you're the bad one because you argue, or we don't have a good relationship, or whatever. And it's like, well, that is true. Conflict and argumentation can absolutely lead to more separation and isolation and resentment, as we talked about last week. Or you can, and this is what I teach my couples, you can start to view and know conflict, confrontation, argumentation as a bonding agent. And most couples will have in their story, oh, it was so bad, we had such a hard first year in marriage, or oh my gosh, we went on our honeymoon and it got so bad, but it brought us closer. Often that is an experience between two people. You don't even have to be married, that you can have a really hard, emotionally chaotic, tumultuous experience. And when on the other end of that, getting through that together, you find you are way closer. You understand each other so much better. You actually feel safer and more seen. Now, I help couples do that more efficiently and with whole lot more ease and harmony, versus perhaps it takes, weeks or months or somebody moving out, them getting separated to finally get to some, what, I don't want to say cohesion, but just understanding one another, per our word today, understanding.
Yeah, totally. It's like arguments and, people don't like conflict. And typically I don't like conflict, but I do know that when there is conflict and when it's resolved, it almost unlocks a new level of the relationship. It's like the deepest understanding, and then you can move forward and then on to the next.
Yeah. And to me, what really is going on is when you say it unlocks a deeper level, when it does get unpleasant feeling, it doesn't look pretty and great. It doesn't look like the rom-com, the movies, the magazine, picture.
Mhm.
What it is instead is, I'm really being vulnerable. I'm really being transparent. I'm really showing you the raw human that I am. And we human beings, I mean, really, this whole journey, part of, I think, what the journey is, and my point of view, is that it is about shaping and kind of smoothing out the rough edges of just being a human being. And we are just so complex. And so when you put away the idea of, like pretending or posing or trying to present something, I want to present that versus present my real self. And my real self sometimes is extremely compassionate and patient, and sometimes is just a mess. And I can barely make a coherent sentence because I'm so dysregulated and upset and overwhelmed. And allowing yourself to be that person and to be seen that. And also allow I know I'm not perfect, and you can say you're not doing well today, and I can accept it. Yeah, I'm not doing well today, and not feel like that was some assault or attack on who I am as a person.
Yeah, this idea of having to be a certain person all the time, not letting, any of the negative emotions show is exhausting. I used to show up that way all the time and not allow myself to let other people see that I was maybe struggling or something was going on, or thinking that if I brought something up to my partner that he wouldn't accept me and then the relationship would be over. Right. So there's all these misconceptions and these fears of vulnerability, authenticity. But the other side of it is like we're all so beautifully unique. And so it's like mind blowing to me that people want to hide that from each other. You know what I mean? Like it's like people are so unique, and I love that you're encouraging people to let that shine.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I love it. Yeah.
So misunderstanding is the norm. So are you saying that a lot of times, like what we're perceived as from someone else or our partners is misunderstood?
Yes. In fact, I teach my couples, and I would like everybody who's listening to this to actually start to adopt the understanding that almost anything you say to another person or anything a person has said to you, you have most of it, you have not 100% understood what you've received, or they will not have 100% received what you sent. That there's actually going to be a larger part. And I know I read this years ago, like, and I'm talking like 15, 20 years ago. I know I read, but I haven't found it since, that only 11% of what you communicate outwardly or somebody communicates to you, only 11% is understood, and the rest is misunderstood. Just simply meaning, it doesn't mean that you're not comprehending the words or the message. It means you're not really getting it as it was
Wow,
intended.
11%.
Now,
That's
so
low.
nobody can quote me on that because since then, because I remember being fascinated by that. And then I've looked and I've looked and I cannot find that. So I'm like, where did that come from?
No,
And so
I kind of believe that though, because a lot of times, like I walk away from conversations and, whether you're not invested with the person or, you have these interactions with people and I'm like, that was interesting. I don't really understand what they meant by that, but I didn't go out of my way to correct it because it was, like I said, it wasn't substantial. It didn't mean anything to me in that moment in as a relationship. Um, but yeah, I think that might be right. I'm like really
yeah.
going deep on this, so I think
So
that
let
might
me
be
show you,
right.
I'll give you a real simple example of how it shows up in
Yeah.
a relationship. So I have this couple, and they've been married for like, I think 26 or 36 years. So a long time. And in fact, I'm almost certain it's a 36-year-old marriage.
Oh,
And so there's, by that point, a lot of resentment, a lot of resentment, which means a lot of erosion in their connection, their intimacy, and their understanding of one another.
right.
So a lot of that has been racked up, a lot of momentum on resentment. And they had now have developed, and every relationship has this, they had developed patterns in how they relate with each other and how they communicate with each other. And so a lot of, well, he just stays in, in his den, and he watches TV and he plays video games on his phone and takes the dog for a walk. And that's just what he does. And I just kind of tiptoe around, and, I'm longing and wanting to kind of like, do something together, but he's not interested. He doesn't want to, or he thinks I'm bothering him. And then when I talk to him, he's like, she's not interested in me. She's been mad at me for years and years and years. So she stays away from me. So this is their actual situation. And
Right.
and no doubt before working with me, they've already had many rounds of having the conversation about this. We don't ever do anything together. You're not interested in me. You always do that. You always do that, over and over for years and years and years. And that has become the pattern. Well, so then when I sat and talked with them, here's how to help them get to understanding versus really living in misunderstanding about their partner in one aspect. And I use visual metaphors or analogies for this. So instead of having him present his case well and basically present the facts, every day you come home at this time and then you do this and then you do that. And then I wonder over here if you want to do this or whatever. So I say this, but then you don't respond. And so then I go back. He's just relaying the facts from his point of view. And then she'll do the same thing and then back and forth and back and forth. Does this sound familiar to you?
Yeah, 100%. It's like the
So,
unspoken truth. That's like we're talking in memes or
yeah.
code to each other.
So that's so a lot of misunderstanding, and misunderstanding is disconnection. It's just
Yeah.
another thing that makes you feel disconnected. There's resentment that makes you feel disconnected, and there's misunderstanding. And um, so I asked him, I said, so tell me in an image, just in a picture, how do you feel? What does it feel like for you in this relationship right now? No words, just give me a picture. If somebody looked at the picture, they'd be like, this is a representation of how he feels in the marriage. And what he said was, I feel like a mushroom on a log
Huh.
in a dark space. Because mushrooms grow, they grow, and like that's kind of their environment is a dark space. And they're very still, they're very sedentary. And then when she comes near him, it's like again, and he metaphorically like opens the door, it shines a bunch of light on the mushroom, and that's accosting to the mushroom's environment. Because what he'd gotten very used to is I'll just stay to myself. Now he, in staying with himself, actually had the heart and mind of I want to connect with my wife. I want to spend time with her. I adore her. You know, she was still interesting to him. And so that is how he felt. Now, even just that, it communicates volumes without going into the harried, hurtful story of how
Totally.
you're not a good partner and how right? There's no threat to her to hear him describe himself as a mushroom. And then I asked her the same question. I said, how do you feel? And she said, I feel like I am in the middle of the ocean and there's nothing nearby. I'm completely out in the middle of the ocean. So there's no point in swimming to shore because it's so far. She knows I'd fatigue. I'm better off just to stay how I am with just my face. Like the water's even just around here. She went that far to describe it this way.
Wow.
And that's the only thing peeking through. And she just kind of like holding herself steady in that water and exhausted at that. And that helped him understand what the feeling.
Hmm.
And it took though, but it took some time because this was one, a brand new approach to how they could communicate and hear each other. And then so then they worked out the image. They explained what the image was. And she could understand, she could get viscerally, ooh, I know, or I think I could know. I could somehow go back in my past and imagine what it feels like to be in a dark, damp, isolated and quiet space, and then when somebody comes near me feeling nervous or accosted about that, she could understand, and what she understood is that doesn't feel good or safe. And then he could understand she's fatiguing and she feels like she's almost going to die, and the only thing that she can mostly muster up is just to breathe, to keep herself. So even just that, she feels so now limited to only one thing she can do to survive here. And it breaks, it breaks all of this other stuff, and now you've got two people understanding. So that's where you are. And then from
Right.
that, we use the metaphor to say, so then now, like often we'll use that picture. So then what can, what are you open to? Or what can she do? What can he do? And then she can say, would you bring a lifesaver to me? Or would you grab me by and do the safety, the first aid, and take me to
Mm.
shore? Or could you just hold me for a moment till I get my strength? And that's how they start to have a very different conversation.
Beautiful. That makes so much sense because people get into their routines and then there's this unspoken understanding that that's just the way it is and that's what we do, right? And then both parties aren't speaking what they need for whatever reason. And I know sometimes this situation might happen. You probably come across this. the time that I do go out of my way to be bold and do something, it was like the timing was off. And that wasn't my fault. That wasn't his fault. It was just life and the situation. And so, I remember one time being like, I'm going to go see him when he's working in his office. And he was in an important meeting and I didn't know. And I walked in front of the camera and it was like awkward. And I was like, and then I retract and I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that again. But that was just one situation. And so I had to like tell myself that, it was just bad timing and it wasn't like anything that I did and my intention was there. And I was trying to break the routine. But that could scare a lot of people to never doing that again. And then there's this unspoken misunderstanding of, I can't interrupt him during work hours, but maybe he wants me to interrupt him during work hours, but it's not talked about, right? So misunderstandings.
Yeah. And I think we're coming out of a time where to share your feelings really meant to expose hurt.
Hmm.
Really, I mean, therapy for many years, and I mean, I'm talking for probably the last 4 or 5 decades, because I mean, therapy really, I think, only really became a mainstream thing. Maybe, I mean, I know there's probably therapy happening in the 40s, but I think that was still kind of the younger part of it. And then, because even in the 60s and 70s, it was still a struggle for people to feel it was okay to talk about their feelings. And it
Right.
was still taboo. You're seeing a therapist and you must be crazy. I mean, we didn't really shake that off until maybe the 80s, early 90s. Was it like, hey, I have a therapist, but yeah, mine's on speed dial. And there's like, I'm wearing the
Yeah.
t-shirt, right? And so I think where we are now is this idea that to share your feelings, I think it's from the past, which is it's problematic to share your feelings. Your feelings mean that you're in pain or there's something wrong, and that's still going to continue. In sharing your feelings and addressing them, talking about them in that way is important. But there's this, I think, the new dawn is talk about the feelings you want to be cultivating. You want
Right.
to nurture and nourish with your partner, and then to that. So you kind of on the tail on the what do you call it, the oh gosh, I'm having a hard time speaking today.
The tail end
um
of the story.
the tail on your tailcoat or whatever, like meaning like
Coattail.
from, yes, what'd you say?
Coattails.
Coattail, thank you. On the coattails of your story about what you did, I'm going to make this bold gesture, to kind of show an expression of my interest and my desire and my love, right? That's what you were aiming to do.
Yeah. 100%.
And then
Spontaneous, bold. Yeah.
yeah, and so then it doesn't go as you thought it would go, and then that kind of makes you feel vulnerable, maybe a little bit embarrassed or shame or whatever, and
Yeah.
then a natural instinct, a primal instinct now to protect myself, save my face, like so I'm never doing that again, or whatever. And so what I like couples to understand is there is, and I remember your partner's name is Matt now, right, Matt?
Yeah.
And you. So there's Lisa. So it's important to know this about a relationship, and I don't think people talk about this a lot. There's Lisa and all of what Lisa is, her own universe, her everything, everything that she's been through and what she wants and where she's, kind of smoothing out rough edges and filling in holes and healing and all the things and creating. So there's Lisa, and then there's Matt, and then there's the relationship.
Right.
The relationship is the third thing, and it is a separate thing that you and Matt are a part of, but it's almost like a puppy or a baby, the relationship.
Hmm.
And it's that this thing, the relationship called, and I always refer to it with my clients, I'd say the Matt and Lisa show. So we've got
Right.
Lisa, we've got Matt, and then we have the Matt and Lisa show. And that's what you guys are co-creating and collaborating on. So instead of always thinking that sharing your feelings has to be about, well, I feel this and I feel that, and that's okay, but also to be, because that doesn't really help the Matt and Lisa show. I mean, it doesn't ultimately, it's healing for Lisa or it's healing for Matt, and it certainly helps you guys understand each other. But to share feelings about, well, this is the kind of environment, this is the kind of culture I would like the Matt and Lisa show to be. So even with this, so what I wanted when I did that, Matt, that spontaneous thing is to show some bold gestures. I'd like a space for that. Are you interested in that? Is there room for that? So
Right.
based on how you guys talk about that, when and if first of all, you might get great feedback from them. Oh my God, I would love that, Lisa. I'm just sorry the timing worked out that way, but now I understand what you're doing. Like, please, babe, bring it on. Then you
Right.
get emboldened again and you get to express yourself in the way that you want to express yourself instead of guessing or saying, okay, I'm never doing that again. And
Yeah.
then there's like, really, then what you're doing is you're just having a Lisa experience
Yeah.
versus a Matt and Lisa experience. And that's the whole point of being in a relationship, right?
Yes. Now we have a sign on the door when he's in a meeting. So there's a sign on the door.
Good. Yeah, I call that making new agreements, which a lot of couples don't do.
Yes.
They don't actually make agreements. So here's the deal. From 9 until 5, I'm not available for any serious conversation. Can we both agree to that? And then from
Hmm.
5:30 on, I'm your guy, I'm your girl. But you have to
Hmm.
make agreements versus assumptions, or thinking only of yourself and going, well, I want to do this, so here I go.
Do you have an outcome from the couple that the mushroom and the person drowning? Did they end up coming to a resolution and how are they doing?
Yeah, so it's really cool. So first of all, I have to say, it's the neatest thing is when I see a couple doing this, and then I don't always see my couples because I do a lot of my work on the phone, but when I see a couple, um, either in the past episode that we did on resentment, when they address the hurt, and there's a certain way I do it, and I use just 4 simple statements that they say to the other person. The way I know it has landed for their for the other, and that's really important too. Like that you begin to make the goal or your intention that whatever I say, I want it to land, which means literally, like think of in the Olympics, when the gymnast, she whatever is her dismount from the uneven bars or the balance beam or whatever, and she boom, and it's 100% and she gets all
Solid.
10.
Yeah.
That's landing. When I say does it land, does it land solid and do you feel it? And we all feel it when we watch the Olympics and we see a landing like that, we feel
Totally.
so that's what I mean. So I speak so that it lands, and you can even say, I really want this to land. So that's what I'm going to aim to do, Matt. I'm going to speak so that it lands. And if it doesn't land, please tell me and let me have another pass.
Right.
Or tell me how it lands. And then when he says, well, here's what I think you were saying or how you feel, that's 80%, but here's the other 20% you didn't get, right? So when I see them and they're either addressing the resentment, the hurt and the sadness and the anger of the past, or when they speak in metaphor or analogy or with the absolute understanding that I have to be sure this person understands me. It's so simple. The most subtlest sign is that most couples at this point are not really looking at each other. They don't really
Mm.
look in each other's eyes. They're looking away. They're averting that because they don't feel the connection. They just don't. So it's hard to look at somebody if you don't feel safe or if you feel dismissed by them, disregarded by them, or hurt over and over and over by them. And so, but when they say something that is a feeling, it's a feeling because that's what understanding is. It's a feeling, it's an emotion. So understanding happens in the body. Is so the couple, the partner who's listening, the moment they hear something and then they look at the person, super, like literally their eyes just go, and they look at the person when that person has said something, then I know connection has happened.
Right.
And when connection happens, that actually means the resentment or the narrative, the impaired judgment a person had been holding about you drops off. That's what happens. And you can see it just in the smallest little thing happen where they literally look at you and they don't take their eyes off of you. They just, so that is, and so I saw that, of course, I saw that in this couple. And what you see immediately is, oh, like you had mentioned earlier, you break through another level. So it doesn't
Mm.
mean that now they went and renewed their vows and they went on a second honeymoon and it's all different, but there is now we're past that. We've overcome that limitation or that block to our connection, and it does open up freer back and forth in their relating and communication. It's just
Right.
freer. It's easier.
it must have been such a relief for each of them to understand that they both didn't want it to be like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It is a sad thing to know that I have two people sitting at my, at my table in my office, and they feel so threatened and so afraid and so resistant and so kind of hardened up, constricted next to a person that they once upon a time felt completely the opposite. This was the person
Yeah.
I could actually run naked with. And I say that metaphorically
Yeah.
and literally. I felt so open and free and seen, and I loved it. And so, you know, it's sad, but I tell people this all the time. You're not wrong and you're not bad. It's not like wag a finger at him or her, like, you guys aren't getting this right. It's if you didn't spend the time in your formative years deliberately learning this,
Hmm.
who was teaching this? Who was giving any hours to teaching how to really listen and how to really express yourself in a way another person is going to get based
Totally.
on the two different worlds you live in? Nobody. So there's no bad person. It's a disconnect.
Hmm. Hmm. So they were able to connect, and are they working on getting each other out of, the darkness and the
Yeah.
water?
Yeah. I mean, this was a few years ago, so I'm not working with anymore. I work it's pretty brief. Typically I have like 12 sessions with a couple, and it's
Okay.
actually four individually with her, four individually with him, and then four couples sessions. And
Okay.
so yeah. But typically that's it. But what I did know happened right away is so he is an avid pickleball player, loves to play
Okay.
pickleball. And she wouldn't, he always wanted her to join him in that because that was fun for him. And she would do it, I think, at times, but I don't think she really, really enjoyed it. There was some, because she had resentment in her. So that was coming on the
Right.
pickleball court. Here, I'm doing something for you, but you don't do anything for me. You could feel that. You could see that.
Right.
And then here she was after that spending time with him in a way that he loves. So kind of joining him where he
Oh,
was in a very, I'm relaxed, I'm at ease, and I'm giving because I'm just sure, and I don't quite know exactly what were the ways that he kind of came over to her side, but it did happen. And so, but like that's what happens is like, oh, okay. And I'm gonna use this term pro-social. There's pro-socialness happening now. If you look up the definition of social, what it means 100%. It means to relate, to connect. Socialness, we are social beings, and it only happens and can happen when there's another person. And so then here we
mm,
are in a relationship, which is a very pro-social container. You've chosen to be in a social entanglement and engagement, whatever you want to say it. You've chosen that, but most people, or no, lots of people in a relationship are actually being antisocial. They're actually in the Matt and Lisa show. They're in a show and they're not actually looking at each other, doing the show together. He comes and records his stuff and then leaves, and then she comes and records her stuff. Like it's that separate, and it just doesn't make sense. And if people would be honest with themselves and say, yeah, I do, I'm kind of like having my own story, I'm having my own
yeah,
idea and agenda, I'm having my own goal and vision of what this is supposed to be, and I'm not really working on this next to my partner and co-creating this thing that we're doing. And lots of people do
totally.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, we were on the couch this week. I think it was 2 days ago, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I mean, I'm on my laptop working all day, all night, and I'm sitting on the couch like in his lap essentially, but I'm on my phone and I don't even realize what I'm doing. And then like 20 minutes later, I tapped him on the shoulder. I'm like, you have to tell me to get off my phone. This is so bad and so wrong. I'm like, tell me to do better. And then I threw my phone and we just laughed about it because it was like I was connecting with him, but we were so disconnected because I was still in my own little world. So yeah, it's just funny to catch that and be like, we need to be connecting right now. Tell me to do better. Like take my phone away. Tell me to get off my phone. Because that's another habit that people are into is like they think connecting is sitting on the couch watching their favorite TV show together, which is fine and it is, but not if you're doing what I was doing and being on my phone and not actually connecting and like being with each other. It's like you're there with another body, but you're not like this.
I'm gonna so you're modeling or demonstrating something also really important in a peaceful, easy, and harmonious relating style or show, right? The show works. And that is Lisa called out Lisa. Lisa didn't wait for Matt to call out Lisa. Matt wasn't afraid to call out Lisa. Matt didn't think it was his role to call out Lisa. I'm playing with yours.
Mhm.
And this is, I always tell my couples, the way to a better relationship is what you do. So when they start working with me, I could imagine some people think, well, good, now we're working with somebody and they'll be better. They'll show up nicer or kinder,
Right.
or passionate. And it's like, no, 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 no. How you're going to improve your marriage by what you do. Don't look to your partner, only look to yourself. If I do this, it's going to be better. If I do this, it's going to be more peaceful. If I could do this, it's going to be easier. If I do this, it's going to be more harmonious. And that's what you did. You called out Lisa. I shouldn't be doing this. And that's the Matt and Lisa show. That's co-creation or collaboration. Take this out of my hand, honey. I'm giving you permission that if you think I'm too much into this or you're needing time or space, say, sweetie, I'm taking this because now the agreement was made. You made the
Right.
agreement. So if he does that next Tuesday, you're not going to feel angry or upset or surprised. You're going to remember I made the agreement, and that's him holding to our agreement. And I'm
Right.
the one who called that out. So then you don't even feel necessarily, accosted or attacked because he actually did that. So you should be, so that to me, that's also the new dawn. Call yourself out. Stop looking at your partner and wagging your finger and wagging your tongue at that and say, nope. And this is such old advice, right? Look in the mirror, look to yourself. And the way you know what you're doing that isn't working is because you feel it immediately. If you feel
Yeah.
bad, something you're doing isn't working. And if you feel really good, something you're doing is working. And make that
Right.
more your fundamental or primary way of showing up versus waiting for your partner to be a perfect being, be this perfect
Yeah.
person, make me
Yeah.
happy.
I totally could have been like, oh, he doesn't care. I'll just sit on my phone all night then. He doesn't care. Like it's that attitude. I have an interesting question for you before we talk about your website and the services that you do provide. But I'm assuming that you work with a lot of couples, and sometimes there's one partner who is just resistant to change, or they just cannot see the other person's point of view for whatever reason. How do you kind of break through to that person? Because I would want to
That's
strangle
yeah.
them.
Well, that is instrumental in part of the value I bring to couples is sometimes it's very validating for one of the people in the relationship who they can say it over and over and over, to their partner. I'll just use something really generic, that you talk over me. You just butt in all the time. Every time I talk and I try to start sharing or whatever, you just butt in. And then that person says, no, I don't. No, I don't, because they just can't see it. They just don't believe it. And so when I'm sitting with a couple and I see that's true, whether or not I was already informed, maybe one of the whoever has the complaint says, oh my gosh, it's so hard because they always complain. And they've told me that privately or even in the thing. If I do see it, I will address it. And I have my skilled and soft ways to do it so nobody ever feels that they are not being supported or they're not safe in this three-person, kind of experience that we have. But I'm just, I'm very, and they know where I come from. So I'm very soft and I will given the person that, how I know them, their personality and what I think is going to be the thing that lands the best,
Right.
that's how I address it. So I have some people who have a very kind of fiery nature or they're very just kind of blunt and upfront. They can handle if I'm just like really straightforward and say, you know, can you, you're talking over the person, your turn is later. Like that would be me being quite direct. And there might be another time where a person who's extremely sensitive, they really don't see it, and they need a much kind of slower, softer approach to being called out, so to speak. Then I might put my hand and I'll even sometimes even before the session starts, if I know that this is going to happen with this person, I'll say, anytime you see my hand go up like this, everybody has to stop talking. And that might
Right.
be a way, that I start to help that person condition and recognize that when they start, interrupting and I go like this, that's a communication. That is communication. And they'll be like, oh, I was going on. I did butt
Mhm.
in. I did talk over that person. And then they can self-correct so they don't feel punitive or disciplined.
Yeah, or like it's really easy for certain personality types to get really defensive.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of men, especially in the era, I mean, Matt's 52, so they were always taught to be strong, like don't show your feelings. And so
Mhm.
you can tell the uncomfort, like when those types of things are brought up. So you're right, it's all about delivering, the way you deliver it, the way you talk about it so that they don't feel attacked and that they feel safe. And as you say, it'll land well for the other person.
Well, here's what I've seen 100% of the time. 100% of the time. We're all human. And I said this last time. We are all so different. I was born in a generation. I don't feel. I wasn't allowed to feel, whatever. Oh, all we did was talk about our feelings, right? We're all so different, yet we're exactly the same. I
Hmm.
have a couple right now I am currently working with, and the husband was in the military, came from a military family, where it was very, and all boys at that, a mom, a dad, and three boys. So feelings were never a part of their culture and their environment. And it wasn't safe. It wasn't okay. It was not what you do. But when we're in a session together, either one on one, and he told me from the get go, he said, I don't do feelings and I don't talk a lot. Now, that's my job that I remember that and I relate with him in a way that he is going to understand. He is going to get this. He's going to feel safe. He's going to feel seen and regarded. And that is my job. So I speak to him in short sentences. When he gives me short sentences, I will be the one who elaborates on them. So let me tell you, here's what you said, and here's what I'm understanding. And mine might go long-winded because he doesn't have necessarily the conditioning or the muscles to do that yet, but because she needs a little bit more than the short little punchy things he says. I
Right.
will act as almost like a translator or an interpreter, and I'll say, so what I think you're saying, or what it sounds like to me, is da 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 da, and then he'll do that I thing, like I told you. When somebody feels seen, which also feels heard, their eyes will immediately look at the target of the thing that where it's coming from, and they're locked in because that's how powerful and important and primal feeling seen is. You almost can't, there's nothing else in the world now except, wow, this person, they see me, they hear me, they get me. And so he is becoming to feel, to see that it's safe and it's effective, it's powerful, it helps the connection for you to share your feelings. And so even in our time together while I'm working with them, I'm sure he's actually getting experience. Oh, there's no harm, there's nothing to be afraid of. And he's also being modeled how to do that. And then, of course, they're getting things worked out because she gets to understand him clearly. And then I always give him the chance, like, do you want to add on to this? But yeah, but just that thing, like, oh, I don't talk, I don't share feelings. It's like, yeah, it's primal. You want to. Because you don't doesn't mean you can't. And because you
Hmm.
don't doesn't mean you won't. It just means you have not found it to be a safe thing, or you've not experienced it in a way that it feels safe to you. And that's what I'm doing, helping people do that.
I love that. It's it's like a challenge. Am I like the deviant side of myself whenever someone says that, like that's just not who I am. I don't share my feelings. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
let's see about that, kind of thing, because I know that it's like in them and I want them to do it so bad. That's awesome. Your work sounds so awesome and amazing, and that is helping couples because sometimes it just takes that third party to see it from a different perspective and to make them understand it, right? It's like the bird's eye view. So would you tell us where to find you, the services that you do provide, and then we'll kind of wrap up on what understanding actually is.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me at lauraburkeycoaching.com. And there's two different ways I work with couples. I can either just do kind of ad hoc, one-off conversations for the couple who's like, we don't really need coaching on our relating and our communicating. We're strong, we're sturdy, we're into all of this, but we do struggle on a particular topic and we just want some resolve or solution, or what I say is move the peg forward because we've been stuck here. Then I can be hired for just that, which almost would seem like mediation, right? Like the way you would use
Mhm.
mediation. We got a problem, we need to talk about that problem. And then I have a program that I put all my couples through, which I had mentioned earlier in this call, which is really it's um it's coaching. It's coaching and helping the relationship, right? I'm coaching him, I'm coaching her privately and individually to help them be a better them in the relation, to come and create and collaborate on the thing that they're trying to build together. And I give tools and techniques, and we create a whole kind of like they learn about having structure and parameters and how to do that in a relationship. Because I hear some couples like they treat it like it's a business. A lot of couples who are in business together, but not necessarily just couples who are in business together, but they run their relationship like a business. And it's like, no, that is, I don't support, I don't agree. Let me be careful. I don't think that is the most fruitful thing to do. You can do it. You are free to do whatever you want, but I just would
So what
never
do you
like
mean by that? How do they run their relationship like a business?
what you've got these roles. I have these roles. This is what you do, this is what I do. And I've seen honestly, like my more high-powered couples, that's how their minds, because they're so business minded that they just
Right.
think, well, we have success in business, so I'm going to adopt this same mindset onto my marriage. And I don't I mean, what I think is missing when you do that is what feels like a place I can sit back and really just not be on, not have
Yeah.
to be on and not be performative. That's what I want. I mean, and I'm just realizing this wording is perfect. I don't want to feel like I'm performing because I felt that my whole life. I felt that in the family I grew up in. I felt that in every relationship I was in until the one I'm in now, where I'm like, and
Yes.
I'm tired. I'm exhausted of performing to be the best daughter, to be the best girlfriend, to be the best wife, to look like that's exhausting. And that's not what I want in my show. I want to feel like, I can be me. I can be relaxed. I can be really, really great. And I can also be really, really not great and be understood in all of that and accepted in all of that and at ease in all of that.
That's the dream.
So anyway, so then I help couples who, in a little bit of a longer coaching program to help them like let's kind of reshape this, or let's, level up some. Let's get some new stuff in that works better than what we've been doing.
Amazing. Do you want to just give a few quick tips on how partners can help each other understand each other better so that there can be less misunderstanding? And then we'll wrap up.
Yep. I'll say three things. One I already said, so I'm just going to reiterate. Start practicing and playing with speaking in imagery, metaphor, or analogy. When you're really trying to convey a message to somebody, do it in a picture. I feel like I remember the first time I ever did this. I was going through a very hard period in my life, and I said, you know what I feel like? I feel like imagine a garden hose, like your hose in the backyard, it's it's just a garden hose, but it's attached to a very like almost like a fire hydrant spigot, like much higher force water. And
Mhm.
so that water is coming through, and the hose is like it's so much power that it's come off of the ground and it's just like swinging and flailing in the air, and it's hitting things. It's hitting the glass table, and it's hitting potted plants and the side of the house. There was a period of my time where that's what I felt like. And I don't know, I just that's what came through. I wanted my friend to understand how, and I felt so out of control. And so even just saying that does it, like, first of all, doesn't that sound like, oh my God, like you must have just felt like chaotic and a completely out of control mess with that. So that's how powerful that can be without me speaking 4, 5, 6 paragraphs. describing how I feel, in emotion words and all that kind of stuff. But the second power to speaking in metaphor is then you bring logic in. So I feel like this garden hose. And I'm like, so then what does logic say? If you looked outside and you heard all this banging and then you're like, oh my God, look at the hose. It's completely out of control because it's attached to a fire hydrant that has too much channeling through it. What would be anybody's obvious logical solution to that? I'm
Turn
going
the
to go
water
out
down.
there and
Yeah.
I'm going to turn the thing down or off or
Hmm.
change it and put it on the appropriate, spigot. So like, and that's very powerful. The second thing I would offer is speak like a first grader. When you find you and your partner in a really complicated, um, messy, chaotic, frustrating conversation, stop for a minute, take a breath and say, okay, I'm going to try something totally different and get off of the way you've been trying to communicate it and say, I'm just going to say this almost like as if there was a 6-year-old right to the side of you. How would you turn to the 6-year-old and tell him, this is how I'm feeling, or this is what's going on? You would say it in very simple language. I
Hmm.
feel alone and I feel like nobody cares about me. That's how you would say it to a first grader to then go and tell somebody else what you're feeling. Does that make sense? So
100%.
speak, yeah. So then you just make it that simple. And another way I say that is just let the words fall out of your mouth. Stop doing so much brain activity,
Hmm.
performative in a way to sound smart, to sound like you've got the more sophisticated point of view, or to be competitive, and just say it simply. I just don't feel good and I feel alone and I don't like this anymore. That lands, Lisa. Does that not land? Because you can
That does
relate with
land.
that. Because
Yes.
we complicate things. And then the last thing is less is more. That's never going to go out of style. Less is more. So when you find yourself in, whether it's by yourself and you're getting yourself all kind of ramped up because you're thinking about, something that just happened, and you didn't like your partner's response, or your partner's not doing something that you asked and whatever and all that, instead of, adding more and more to the narrative and your feelings and your justification, whatever, stop yourself and just in that case, stop. Get one little thought. Okay, you know what? Here's the best one. And I've taught my kids this. My kids are now 17 and 19, but I taught them early on. If there's ever a time in this family that you don't feel safe or okay, I guarantee you there's a misunderstanding. That's what my kids now just know, because mommy would never want my two children to feel not safe or not loved or not okay. And certainly my two children would never, at the age that I taught them this, they would never have had a mind to think that. So this is the norm in our house. If you don't feel good about what somebody did, you must be misunderstanding something, and either one, be at peace with that. I clearly didn't understand, and you can stop there, or you can say, I didn't understand what was going on and I'm going to circle back and I'm going to ask, hey, when you came home and you walked right by me in the kitchen, you seemed upset. Is everything okay? Because like normally
Right.
you would say something to me, and you get it from the mouth of the one. You don't make your own narrative. So
Hmm.
less is more. Stop all that you're doing and simplify it. Keep it in a small little nugget, and then if you really just don't know, you go ask the person. And if you ask the person, then you must, now I'm going to listen. I'm going to hear what you have to say and
Yeah, I
believe it.
love that. It was amazing having you back today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think the thing that I took out of this in the last few words that you just said is that we don't have to try out to be the lead actor in our movie because we're already the lead actor. So instead of forcing things and overthinking and believing that we have to show up a certain way, we just have to show up and be ourselves. And you really teach us that. So I appreciate all of your knowledge, and our audience does too.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to next time, Laura, and to our audience, I look forward to seeing you guys again too. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, my name is Lisa Urbanski, here with Laura Burkey. Um, excuse me, with the advisor. Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. Bye.